And we're live. Welcome to you, the viewer. Welcome to our fantastic panel. It's the After Dram. And that means it's time to unwind. It's time to put your feet up, grab a dram or two, and put your feet up, drink, enjoy yourselves, relax, and hear what we got to hear. Enjoy yourselves. I said that 3 times because it's very, very, very important. As a quick recap to our evening, Dave, Drew, Sheila, Kent, Cheryl, Nick, and I have done a deep dive into the final 2 chapters of The Language of Whisky, this book right here. And I'm not holding any... Oh, there we go. That's good. With the author, David McNicoll. It was informative. It was fun. It was a bit sad, actually, because it's our last night with David. Well... That is until he writes his next book and comes back to us, and then we read that with everyone. So what we're going to do again is we're going to do a quick round of introductions, and please tell us what's in your glasses this time, because hopefully it's changed from last time. I'm going to keep you on small little squares. We're going to go David, and then Robin, Nicole, Cheryl, Yukon, Dave, and Drew. David.
Yep, I haven't gone far, and I'm still... I'm David, the author of Language of Whisky, and I haven't traveled far from Uncle Tommy and his Dewars.
Still Dewars, good stuff. Hello, Robin. What do you have in your glass tonight?
Right. Well, so I pulled this out. I haven't drank out of this glass in a long time. This was actually the first real whiskey glass I ever bought, the Riedel glass.
Okay.
And I figured, And the reason I like this is because I've got a classic cask Bowmore, 11 years old, 2001 distillation. And the reason I like this glass for this whiskey is that this glass it's a malt glass, and it actually does tend to pull out the maltiness and vanillins out of a whiskey, and it kind of enhances them a little bit more. So, as you can see, that's like really, really, really light. So that's probably like a 3rd fill or a 4th fill barrel they put this in. But yeah, so this kind of like this will enhance it. So it's a Bowmore. It's a nice little smoke right there.
Would you call it a bourbon glass then? If it's pulling out the vanillins, is it more bourbony then? You think?
Well, no, I mean because there's not a whole lot in there, so it's going to highlight. There's on a 2nd or 3rd fill barrel, there's not a whole lot of vanillin left, so it's going to pull out as much as can be, and it'll highlight a little bit more. If I were to put a bourbon in this glass, it would be like way overwhelming.
Overpowered.
Like just smack you in the back of the head.
There's Robin's book. He didn't pull it up. I've got it up here. Let's see who else got. There we go. We got 4 of us with it. Dave's getting his tomorrow. And he's got a signature on his as well, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, hold mine up.
Oh, there's the poster works perfectly. Nicole, you're
hold the same one up.
That looks like the pocket edition.
I'm still working on the Adelphi.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Cheryl and Kent. Cheryl, you're first.
Okay, I'm still working on my Oloroso Hazelburn. However, I'm
people
it now. If I can get it there. Just a local distillery here, Black Diamond.
Okay.
And their Earl Grey Mule. Very interesting.
Very interesting. And Kent, you're up.
Well, I am also working on the Sisters, a chocolate stout, but I have also switched up to a Springbank 18.
Nice. Dave, tell me you have something else, not just the Bladnock.
No, the Bladnock's gone. I am now drinking a bottle I started yesterday, so it's
yummy.
Getting dangerously low. It's our 42% Munich malt. It's one that we make ourselves, and I enjoy the hell out of it. And
nice. Robin, you might not know, Dave's a brand ambassador with 2 brewers, and we all love 2 brewers down here. I'm not sure. Have you had very much ever, Robin, of 2 brewers?
I've never heard of it. Sorry.
You're going to find out right from the Yukon. All right. And
cool. Hey, absolutely. Hey, look, Dave, you and I are going to have to get in touch with each other because I don't know anything about the whiskey from up in that area of the world, and if I start working on like the second edition of this, I'm going to want to pull those in. So
Oh, definitely. We'll get you. Well, I've got to get David samples. I got to get you samples.
You've got to get everyone.
I got to get you a book.
You bastard. Get us some samples. I'm kidding. David's very forthcoming with samples all the time. He really is.
I can't send samples till I get the book.
You got to send them to Ron.
Hostage.
Sheila, you're up.
I am Sheila. I am drinking. I've gone back to the old faithful, so I'm drinking Famous Grouse again tonight.
Nice. Is it regular or black grouse?
I'm just on the regular.
Oh.
I'm hoarding my. Actually, I'm hoarding the Ruby Grouse. So
You hoard
my
that all.
in-laws send us more.
Yeah.
You're allowed. And the man at your side, Drew, what you got?
I am still working on the 2, the Oban and Ardbeg 10, but I have Redbreast sitting on the side to top up with when they's empty.
Nice. Which year or the cast strength?
Wow.
Which one?
Just 12. Yeah.
12. Not cast?
No, not. I'm not going to crack open the cask or the all sherry cask. My retirement bottle is running low.
Got it. Well, I wanted to introduce Robin to how we do things here, so I thought I'd start with a quote. Because Robin, I apparently do quotes a bit too much, but I don't care. I'm doing it anyways. So, David, page 187, he states, tasting
I haven't even got to LaGuardia yet.
No, Kent's going to get to the LaGuardia himself. Kent said he wants to talk to you about it, so he'll bring that up when he thinks it's ready. Tasting notes are simply
LaGuardia.
I trust of the distillers and blenders, however, as they really are experts and are no better or attuned than yours. It's their vocabulary that's been honed. So, panel, what's your opinion on these two statements? It's just people's opinions, and we should trust distillers. And David, I'm going to come back to you and Robin, but I'm going to read something from SMWS and see if you agree with your statement with that. All right.
Is there a question in there?
It is.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on the statement? Do you agree with it? Tasting notes just being people's opinions, Dave.
Tasting notes are their opinions, but it has to be something they've had. If you've never had a dragon fruit or a mango, you are never going to find it. So it is subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Your
100%.
Good. Nicole, how about you? You've read a lot of tasting notes with me. What do we think?
Yeah, it's opinion and it's experience. It's what that smell, aroma conjures up for a person. And a lot of time it's a memory, it's an emotion, but it's that person's. My emotion and memory is going to be very different than yours when you have that whiskey in the glass. And that's what it is.
Excellent.
It's also very suggestive. Oh, that tastes like tar. Have you really had tar in your life?
It tastes like marshmallows. I say that at tastings just to fuck with people. I really do. And I hear that, oh, yes, marshmallows it is. It's like,
Or as I said, your first day at school.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's my kind of school.
Yeah. First day at school, you're going to get somebody fucked up. You know, they don't know. But marshmallow could be anything from vanilla to sweet to whatever. Like, if you tell somebody marshmallow, they can pull something that reminds them of marshmallow in a glass of whiskey almost every time.
So you saying that Dolph is hedging his bets there with that one?
Oh, yeah.
You know it.
I'm trying to be very, I don't know, explicative with it. I thought marshmallow was being very original. Thanks, Drew.
Is it marshmallow at the fair, or is it marshmallows around the bonfire? You know.
No, the bonfire marshmallow, not just the first layer. You have to peel it off, David, and then you post the other one. That's the one it tastes like. The second layer.
Well, I know what's going into book number 2 then.
Bullshit from around the world. Good. Now, David and Robin, I'm going to read this, and I'm going to put the picture on here. It's going to cover your faces. Sorry. but I want you to see if, because you said that you trust the distillers. This is what they say at SMWS. And I just bought this week. So this is the bottle I bought. A deep and dark nose ventured through dimly lit wine cellars towards wooden crates, packaged with walnuts, bananas, and dried orange skin. Pineapple sizzled on the hot plate of a steam engine as a thin layer of soot coated the tea leaves and tobacco. Then truffles and dark chocolate brought an oily weight that grew, and ginger and sage towards punchy crescendo. Water illuminated wine notes of oily Rieslings and Takai dessert wine, while sweet elements ventured into toffee and candy floss. A lively and tingly sensation lasted onto the huge finish and combined chocolate and mushrooms with leather, oak, and crushed black pepper. After 13 years in a bourbon barrel, we transferred this whiskey to an Oloroso hogshead. So having said that, and that's a lot, even for me to say in a quote, do we agree, David, that you agree with the with the distillers and the blenders when they give you tasting notes when it comes from SMWS?
I don't know where to begin with that, to be honest with you.
Not touching that.
The word whiskey was the fifth last word in that entire thing, which is what it should be tasting like. I mean, they had me at walnuts, but that's some fluff there, isn't it? I don't know. Sometimes,
and just to help you, it was a Glenfarclas that I bought. So if that helps with anything, it was a Glenfarclas.
Okay, yes, it sounded like a Glenfarclas to me, but especially the steam engine bit. To be honest with you, that's the stuff that sticks in my craw. I'm not a fan of all that.
That's marketing.
Whose palate is that designed for? That's going to sit there and going, oh yes, I'm getting pine needles and what is that? No, I'm not a fan of that.
What kind of steam engine?
If that's coming from a distiller, shame on them.
I'm pretty sure it's not a distiller. I'm pretty sure it's a room of 5 writers sitting there just trying to be as creative as possible.
Yep.
But
no, basically it's 5 writers who've got some kind of app where they just type in whiskey and Google provides them with a thesaurus and they just randomly pick phrases. But the problem is it's symptomatic. Is that there's a sense that you have to come out with this stuff. Where let's keep it simple, stupid. You know, it's meant to be joy, not meant to be dissected to death.
Well, SMWS really does like to go into the other realm.
They've always done that, though.
And you guys have that there. I think SMWS has a home in New York City, does it not?
I don't know. It didn't when I don't know actually. Does it, Robin?
No,
I don't think so.
No.
I know
Tom Smith. They have an office, but it's not really a home.
There's not where like the place in Edinburgh where you can go in and
no, it's not.
Yeah,
no,
I know there's one in Chicago. There's a Volter bar or whatever else.
Well, we've got bars. Calgary's got a couple bars with them too, but I was hoping it was something like Edinburgh where I could go in and see not just 6 or 7 or 8 or 10, but like 50 different.
What they have now are sort of like partner bars.
Yeah.
So there are a few whiskey bars that will carry an extensive selection of SMWS selections. Yeah, like a Flatiron Room, for example, would be one of them.
Yeah.
All right. It is a job that I would do. I would quit teaching to become a writer for them, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if the rest of you feel the same way, but I would deal out that amount of BS and have that as my job for the rest of my life. I think
quite honestly, it sounds like a word salad that is, and essentially it's what it is. It's a word salad. And the bad news about the SMWS, and I've been a member for a lot of years, is that it was really wonderfully and kind of characteristically unique and very idiosyncratic when they first started out. And that was 35 years ago or something like that, right? And so, and then since then, I think that they keep setting the bar higher. Now, if you go back and look at some of the earlier labels, they're fun and they're colorful.
Yeah.
And you kind of like, oh yeah, that's really kind of neat. But that what you just read, it was kind of like, wow, man, it was like it was like it was babbling. And I think what's happened is that from a literary perspective, they've topped out and now they're jumping the shark. And I just mixed two metaphors there. So there you go. You know, so you can see how easy that is. You know?
Well, I guess the question you could ask yourself is, if you remove the fact that you were talking about whiskey and tried to and suggested that you were actually describing
no idea
something that you would expect in the chopped kitchen, then if it no longer describes that which you think it is, then it's no longer fit for purpose.
Yeah, I 100%. I agree with you 100%. Was that a watch? Was that was that a car?
Well, let's
was
say
it something on Iron Chef, or was that a whiskey? I have no idea.
It was cask 1-215 Formidable Chocolate from SMWS. But I have had it could have been someone's fudge. Drew makes a great fudge. Actually, Sheila, Drew, Nick, a lot of people we know make a whole bunch of fudge at Christmas, and it's all peated. And it could have been that. A little touch of leather, a little touch of leather. Yeah. The steam engine coming through. I get it. We're good. And we're going to do an experiment. So this came from the chapter. Okay, so we're all going to do an experiment. Robin, sorry, I'm bringing this up to you. I don't know if you have this available. But David gives us some information about bubbles on the surface of whiskey called pearls. And from these, I've got a quote. I got to put the quote. No, there we go. And from these, you can tell if the whiskey is mature or young, high or low proof. High proof or older whiskeys produce bigger and greater amounts of bubbles that tend to last longer. So what I did is I asked everyone on the panel here to grab a bottle that's clear, hide the bottle, and we're all going to start shaking our balls at the same time, and we're going to do it for 5 seconds, and I'll count down. And when we're done, we're going to put them up to the camera so you can see the neck, right? So hide the labels, show the neck, and David or anyone else that wants to comment, you're going to tell me if one of them are young or not young. And the other thing I said, it all had to be between 40 and 46%, so we didn't have cask strength in there, so it was just about the same amount, and in the clear bottles. So are we all ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
We all got our bottles?
Count it down.
All right, hold on. Wait for me. I got to hold it. It is a clear bottle. Ready? Clear bottle. And we're starting in 3, 2, 1, shake. Shake for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and stop. And then put it up to the front. What do you think? Now, is any of them an older whiskey, do we think?
No, it's hard to tell. Drew, you look like you've got something that's bubbling. I don't know. It looks like.
I think Cheryl's got a pretty decent looking whiskey.
Mine's still bubbling a small amount. It's hard to see through it here.
Yeah.
All right.
I got really nice tiny
bubbling a little.
David. If it bubbles longer, it's supposed to be older. Is that correct?
I don't know about shaking it in the bottle and leaving it on the top of the thing. It was an old way of determining proof before the hydrometer was invented. That you either smelt it, tasted it, or you poured it in, and the larger the bubbles would allow you to determine whether the proof was high. But everything was clear spirit then, so everything was very high proof. But if it is an older age, then the rule of thumb is that it should take longer to disperse the bubbles. So but it's hard to see on the cameras here who's got.
All right, I'm going to do both. I've got a 46-year-old and a 44-year-old. Sorry, a 46%
millionaire.
And a 44%. One of them's an 8-year-old. The other one's a 34-year-old. And it worked for me before, but this is a big difference. So I'm going to try to hold this. And hopefully you get to see what I get to see. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So which one's older?
Yeah.
Wait, hold it.
Well, I'm going to go to the
You're
one,
right.
the dark one.
Dark or light? Which one's older, dark or light?
Dark.
Light.
The lighter one.
The light
The
one.
light one, yeah.
They're both still going from my perspective.
No.
All right, so the reveal. We ready? David, I'm not trying to be mean to you, just so you know. Or here, I'll do it again with just my face.
Yeah.
Listen,
Then we can actually see what's going on.
Mhm.
The lighter side looks
Yeah,
like it should
light.
be.
More bubbles on the light.
So more bubbles means better whiskey?
Well,
No.
if I'm looking from the
Oh,
back,
boy.
the
Oh,
darker
boy.
one's still bubbling a bit more, which works for me. You can't see it. So this
I
one's,
can't see it.
the light one's an 8-year-old from Carnmore. And this one's a 34-year-old.
It's hard to see the bubbles behind the darkness, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
I didn't see anything.
But I did that because when I did the experiment with Laura, my lovely wife beside me, we did see that the older whiskey did last longer, and it is hard to see on the camera. The bubbles did continue longer. It said a larger bubbles, and I couldn't tell the difference between larger and smaller. But it did
I
last
enjoy
longer.
ambiguity when I'm writing.
So everyone else, what do we get?
If you pour it
Oh.
into the glass and it goes to the rim and it all starts to disperse out, it should be the large. If you get nice big bubbles, there are other parameters in there. You know,
Okay,
the
I'm not
cast-
opening
cast
my
height and so on.
34-year-old right now. But maybe I should.
Maybe you should.
Robin, what do you have? Or was
In
yours,
terms of
Robin,
what?
yours was the 11-year-old?
Yeah, I had an 11-year-old, and the one I actually shook was actually this EY tradition, right?
Oh.
So, and this is relatively young whiskey, probably about 3 to 5 years old, and it had tiny little bubbles in there, and then I had this 11-year-old Bowmore, and they were pretty much about the same rate,
Okay.
So yeah.
Nicole,
I think
what do you have?
the way that David explained that afterwards is actually closer. That was a way of ascertaining proof before the hydrometer, and you typically were using that with clear spirit off the still. That's akin to lighting a match, to see if it's a proof,
Right.
So, actually, and if you go down to Oaxaca, you'll see mezcaleros actually do something very similar with their mezcals. And the guy who loves to do this is Pinky, who is the warehouse manager at Lagavulin. And I know David knows him, right?
Okay.
Because he's a showman. And he'll put it in a big graduated cylinder, and he'll just shake out of that thing, and talk about it. And so yeah.
Is that with the gunpowder, Robin, or no? Just the whiskey.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, he was a loading powder, I'll tell you that.
Nicole, what do you have? What do you shake?
No, was it?
Cooper's Choice. How old?
10 years.
I have that. That's a good bottle. Yeah. Thank you very much. Drew, Sheila, what'd you guys do?
Naked gross.
Oh, okay. And yours bubbled out pretty quick, or no?
No, it bubbled. It kept bubbling for a while.
Okay. We got to try it in glass just to see.
Yeah.
I love the fact that after 5 weeks of chat, the whole thing is boiling down to bubbling, shaking bubbles.
I'll put, and I can't see what. Oh, Linkwood. I love Linkwood.
Linkwood's great.
I really do. And Dave, what do you have, buddy? You did your two
Well,
brewers?
I did this Irish single malt, Irish whiskey, and then I did I'm drinking 11, so I was
You
too
might as
lazy
well
to go get
take
anything
that
else.
one up. Good.
Yeah.
Are we? Is everything like for like in terms of proof, though?
What's
Yeah.
that?
Well, that's
Everyone-
what I told everyone to
the
have
comparison, were they
40
all
and
like
46.
Yeah, I was
We were 43.
I was at 40 and 43.
44 and 46 for me. All right. That's good. It was just one of those things, David. And there's another thing from that chapter I liked a lot that hopefully I get a chance to get to. But I do want to ask Robin a question. So let's get to Robin, get him a little bit involved with us, see what things are like here in the After Dram. So Robin, in the forward, actually, I got a quote. Maybe I don't. No, I do. There it is. So, Robin, in your forward for David's book, you said David, does it without being pedantic or boring. I dare say that the great Michael Jackson would have given his blessing. Now, I know Michael Jackson was well respected in relation to beer and whiskey, and that International Whiskey Day was devoted to him on March 27th, his birthday. I need to know why you referenced him here. Like, how much love is there out there for Michael Jackson? Because I kind of came across him very early in my whiskey days, but I didn't hear a lot. So I'm wondering why you picked him, and is it because he's like the granddaddy? He's the grandfather of them all.
Yeah, I mean, Michael's the modern oracle of Scotch whiskey. Michael pretty much brought Scotch whiskey out of obscurity. He started writing about beer, and then it was a natural thing to move into whiskey. But when he published those books, whiskey was coming out of its great sleep. It was coming out of the lock, and so as a result, I mean, he was the first guy that kind of came out and said, "Wow, here's this stuff, and we make it here, and it's fantastic, and all of these different distilleries are very unique." And that was a very, very special time in whiskey's history, because Scotch whiskey was primarily blends, and blends were just branded names, and no one knew or even cared about what was in the bottle. It was just it was a Dewar's, it was Johnny Walker, it was J&B, or whatever it was. And then Michael, highlighted it, and he did it in such a way that was again, non-pedantic. I mean, it was like anybody could pick up that book, and I always say that you read the first 75 pages of Michael's book, and you don't need to know anything else. He explains right there why Scotch whiskey can only come from Scotland, and he gives you that feeling. It's kind of like the way Ken Kesey wrote about Oregon in Sometimes a Great Notion. In the first chapter, it's like, oh my God, I want to move there, because it just kind of gave you that sense. So yeah, I mean, that's how I found David's. David's was non-pedantic and was accessible, and yeah, I think Michael would have approved. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Well, it kind of follows to the next question. I'm going to throw to both you and David. How big or small or close-knit or exclusive is the alcohol whiskey author community out there? Because you both know each other, but is it because you live so close together, or because the community's like really close?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that quote from Robin is fantastic. I really appreciate the fact that he did that, because Michael Jackson, yeah, Robin's right. It made it very accessible. I mean, even working in the industry back in Scotland in the distillery, it wasn't on a radar that you even had to tell people about Scotch whiskey. It wasn't how they envisaged how you got it to the consumer. There weren't brand ambassadors. There weren't magazines. I mean, I think it's David Datty's book from of Scotch whiskey. I mean, this was written in the '60s. I mean, that was your go-to, and the
great book.
industry.
That was the only one.
Brilliant. It's a brilliant book. Or I think I've got it down here somewhere. I've got a reprint of the Scotch whiskey book again by the Scotch Whisky Association. I think it's written in the 1970s, I think, and it's still, because everything's still in gallons and pounds, shillings, and pence. So that was your thing, and then the idea of the connect to the consumer I think that was definitely something that Michael Jackson did. He made it accessible, which I think we should all stand on the shoulders of that giant in terms of that as an industry. What was your question again, Dolph?
My question was, how close knit is the community? Because do you know each other very well?
I would say that we all I don't know, we kind of all know of each other. I think more than know each other. It depends on, you know, working. If you're working for a brand, you tend to be in a sort of more of a bubble of a community of you. You kind of have to be involved with other people because you're doing events or you're doing stuff like that, and you get introduced to people. I think that we are a kind of scattered amount, and we do, you know, knock into each other at events and so on. I don't know, from a literary point of view, no, I wouldn't say that we would sort of all get together and have a big hoolie, but I think we kind of know each other. I guess one thing I would say as a caveat to that is that being Scottish in New York, we all kind of know each other as well. There's a sort of Scottish mafia in New York too. So whether you're involved in whiskey or not, there's the Scottish associations and Caledonia societies and this kind of thing. So I kind of know people in that have a passing element or passing interest in Scotch, or the bar owners and bartenders and so on. But I think that, is it close-knit? I don't think it's as big as we maybe think it is, but it's not necessarily a small village either. That's my take. I don't know, Robin.
Well, there's actually two parts of that question, because David and I, for example, David and I are unusual in the fact that we come out of the field. So we were out there working. We were brand-oriented people who were working the streets.
Right.
And then we ended up writing.
David has, yeah.
So exactly. So we're a little bit different than everybody else. Everyone else comes out as an appreciator, or comes out of a literary or a journalistic approach. So you think about them coming from the outside, and David and I kind of came at it this way. That being said, he and I had probably the best opportunities to meet everyone, and I've met literally everybody in the industry who writes. There's probably no one that I haven't met yet, and that's only because I was working out in the field, and all of those people would interact with me at one point or another. Now, in the early days when I first got into that, I got into this business in late 2008, 2009, and it was very different then than it is right now. There was very much of a small, tight community, and whiskey was in its second wave. It was whiskey's in its third wave right now, and I'll explain that in a second. Okay. But whiskey was in its second wave, and as a result, all of us really made a point of getting to know each other, and it was a tighter, smaller community, and we were all learning intensely from each other. And there were many, many different places to do that. Not like there are right now. Actually, let me rephrase that. There were fewer places to do that. So we all ended up at the same places. Okay. Right. So you went to Chicago. Where are you going to go? You're going to go to fucking Delilah's, and everybody's at Delilah's. Right. And you went to New York, and it was typically like Brandy Library and then Ward 3. And then, boom, there was an explosion. And then that happened everywhere. But prior to that, we all ended up in the same place. We all ended up in the same shows. We all interacted with each other. And then in the past 5 years, boom, man, I mean, it just opened up and exploded. And 1,000 people rushed into the industry that had never been there before. Okay. And then 1,000 venues opened the industry up at the same time. And so consequently, we all became a little bit more dispersed. And then those people who had been around for a while were typically the ones that other people would say to a new writer, oh, well, then you should go and talk to that person. Right. And then we would get linked up by that. So So yeah, it kind of came in waves. We're in the third wave right now. So I always take a look at trends in regards to waves. So in the first wave is the avant-garde and the people who are seeking out something that barely even exists. There's only a whisper of whatever that trend is out there, and they're the ones who are going out and purposefully seeking it, or maybe even accidentally falling into it, and then adopting that as their coat of arms against the rest of the world. And that could be anything from hip hop to whiskey. Okay. And then they hold on to it for a while. And then the second wave comes in. And the second wave essentially becomes the influencers and the people who spread the word. And then they come in. And if you look at this like a bell curve, like going up like that,
yeah,
they're coming in and they're actually bringing this trend up the bell curve. Their whole idea is to get everybody else to know about this. And then because of their success, the trend moves up the bell curve, and then you get near the top, and that breaks into the third wave. And the third wave is like, boom, now this is in the minds of the general public. And that's kind of like where whiskey is right now. Whiskey is in the minds of the general public. It's part of the conversation now. So if you look at the wine trends from the 1980s, especially in America, right? So it was France and a little bit of Germany that dominated wine, a little bit of Spain. And then there was the shakeout in 1976 and with California wines in France. And then boom, through the 80s, you just saw wine go from first wave into the second wave. By the time you got in the 90s, wine broke open and it was everywhere, right? And now everyone learned how to say Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon and things that you didn't know before, because, we were all saying things like, Gallo, and Paul Masson. So and so whiskey, I think, is following in that way right now. And so whiskey is like part of everyone's conversation right now. So it's a much different time.
Well, I would maybe add to that though, Robin. Do you think that we're maybe on a slight? Obviously, this year is such an anomaly, but in the fact that obviously sometimes the tail wags the dog, is that the industry catches up with what that bell curve trend is, and so suddenly every brand had to have a brand ambassador. But brand ambassadors are luxuries that if you're not a salesman and a brand ambassador, it becomes difficult for you to have the numbers matching the goodwill guy that's out there just shaking a paw and doing the spends in the bar. Is that there's a contraction within the industry, partly that they're not going down the road of dedicated single brand ambassadors by themselves, in that there is maybe a slight contraction in that bubble perhaps has reached its peak, and we're now looking at plateauing out of that element of it in terms of from the industry point of view.
Oh, well, quite honestly, that's how I got involved in the industry. I was brought into the industry to change the role of the brand ambassador. That's the only reason I even.
Well, I mean, I was brought on by Robin Cooper when Robin Cooper had been virtually the only brand ambassador of anything in New York when he was at Glenmorangie before he even got to Glen Grant. And so, in those days, there was like 3 Scottish guys. If you had a Scottish accent and knew something, you could spell whiskey, you got a job in the whiskey industry. And now you need an honours degree in organic chemistry. And I think that it became something slightly different because the industry, in a way, didn't quite twig what the tail wags the dog, to use that phrase again. But they're always playing catch up because the trend is ahead of them. And having worked for a gin brand for a couple of years, the catchphrase was always, "It'll be gin's turn this summer. It'll be gin's turn this summer," and it never was gin's turn this summer in America.
Wait a minute. Rum keeps saying that too. Oh, this is the year of rum. This is going to be the year of rum.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's always because and I don't know. I mean, I think that there is.
Well, to your point.
Yeah.
I think your point would
to gin, I guess, in people's minds.
at the end of the day, I mean, I'm a salesman. I was a salesman before I came in here. I was brought in as a salesman. I was brought in as a salesman to fulfill a brand ambassador's role. And that was the idea of the guy that brought me into the industry. And he should know, because he's third generation in the industry. And so his idea was that he had seen the way that brand ambassadors were in the industry. And he told me, he goes, this is how he got me out of the tech industry, because I was a sales guy in for Silicon Valley companies. The way he got me out of that, he goes, look, there's this role called the brand ambassador, and it's the most unfulfilled role in the industry. Now, in the old days, in the what David was referring to as the goodwill man, that was back when business and sales and marketing actually were two sides of the same coin. This is back in the Seagram's days and National and Hubeline and all of these big companies that actually had their own sales forces, and there wasn't this division. And guys, I know you're Canadian. I'm talking specifically like from an American business perspective here. It might be a little bit differently the way the LCB does it in some of the provinces. So completely different about how people went to market. And the goodwill man back in there was part of an account team. So he was as much salesman as he was brand ambassador back then. Right. And then the whole thing went away. And when brand ambassadors came back again, they came back in the form of Evan Katzenach, who was the first real brand ambassador, who was the former distiller at Cardew. And he's a great Scotsman, you know, a great big guy here. And, you know, and he brought the entire cultural aspect, you know, to Scotch whiskey. And then he trained the first, yeah, there goes some Cardew. He trained the first generation of the American oriented brand ambassadors. And that was like Steve Beal and Marty Duffy and Rick Edwards and Marcy Ruderstan and you know, those people. And then suddenly everybody had to have a brand ambassador. And so when my patron essentially talked to me about, you know, getting into the industry, he pointed at that. He goes, but if you had a guy who could do that, and he knew, I mean, he's known me for 30 years and he knew I was an actor for 12, 15 years. So, you know, going up in front of a crowd was not going to be much of an issue for me. But he said, but if you put a sales guy in that role, somebody who can actually do the presentation, do the education, do the fun stuff, but then get up in the morning, run down through the Excel spreadsheet and go and start banging on the distributors' doors with pricing, with programming, and moving the sale forward. He goes, that guy could probably change the industry. And that's what I said. Shit, man. Yeah, let's do it. You know, I'm interested. Yeah. So and now
a day in the life of both of us, there, Robin.
What's that?
A day in the life of both of us is when people think that brand ambassadors have this sort of luxury lifestyle. It's like, yeah, wait till you get to the Excel sheet and you have to turn 2 cases to 3 cases and so on. But from your point actually as well, Rob, not to hog this particular question, but when I was working for a travel agency down in Edinburgh, I was a tour guide, etc. There was a job came up in those days. Your jobs came up in the local newspaper, and it was in the Scotsman newspaper from Edinburgh, and it was a job of global brand ambassador. This was in 2002. Global brand ambassador for Highland Park. And so I applied for it. I was this 23, 24-year-old guy who'd never worked in the industry apart from what I'd worked at a distillery. So I knew how the stuff was made. And I'd worked as a tour guide, and so I could chat. So I applied for this job, and I got an interview. I mean, I got an interview for the global brand ambassador for Highland Park. And the interview wasn't sadly in Orkney. It was up the road in Perth. And I went to the office in Perth, and I got interviewed by 2 people who clearly had no idea what a brand ambassador did. I didn't know that then. When I look back at it now retrospectively, these two kids had no idea what a job, a brand, because they'd never come across it before.
But everyone's
Somebody
got
had
one,
decided
so we
for-
have to have one too.
Yeah, they had to invent it. And I didn't get the job.
Yeah.
But the thing was that was something that suddenly appeared on the radar about 18 years ago for me.
See, my job right now, my job right now as a consultant, as a brand consultant, is to actually eliminate the brand ambassador. And if you go up to my website, I have one segment of my website is called Build a Better Brand Ambassador. And what I'm looking to do is actually get a salesman with a personality and it can tell a story, or a brand ambassador who can actually walk through an Excel spreadsheet. And for me, and to David's earlier point, this was happening pre-COVID. Now COVID's really going to shut the whole thing down. A brand ambassador is spend. It's marketing spend. And marketing spend can only go so far unless you're touching the top line. And if you're not a revenue producer, you're going to hit in, you're not going to have the job very much longer. So revenue production is touching the top line is really where everything is at right now. If you're a bottom line spend, I've seen this. I've seen brand ambassadors in the industry come and go just like that, and it destabilizes everything underneath it as well, because especially in the United States, because we have this goofy 3-tier system here. The salespeople in the distributor level, and then the retailers and the bartenders in the trade level below that, you still do business with people that you like to do business with. And if that person is still a consistent person over time, then your brand is going to have a whole lot more impact, But if they're changing through brand ambassadors every 6 months, then what does that tell me from a buyer's perspective? Completely unstable, right? Because I can't really make a relationship with this person. And then you make a relationship with that through that person to the brand. So it's destabilizing.
Well, I think we have an old saying in Scotland that goes, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And perhaps that to what I said on Thursday night to you guys that were there when we mentioned Tommy Dewar, was he was the guy who said that people buy from people. And he realized that in the 1890s, have we really come much further than that? We're just reinventing the wheel every single time that this thing goes in flux. In the fact, but Robin's point is that ultimately, if you need a guy who can walk through the spreadsheet, because unless you are making case sales, it doesn't matter how good you are in tasting. You're not going to last very long.
So David, was he kind of your favorite? Because you said he traveled to nearly 30 countries preaching the gospel. Was he the epitome of a brand ambassador? So someone at that time that had an interest within the distillery, maybe an owner.
I think he was really, I think Tommy Dewar was really in a minority of one. And I think that he changed the way.
Absolutely 100%. He was a unique individual.
Yeah, he was the man who changed the way that the world looked at whiskey. I think that we talk about the whiskey barons and good old Jimmy Buchanan and his bounty checks for his lordships and all the rest of it. But these guys were they had their juice, and the way that the Scotch whiskey industry had worked was that you sold through a merchant. The Irish whiskey was very similar as well. As you made the juice, you sold your juice to a merchant. The merchant may have put their label on it and sold it to the end user. Now, the whiskey barons kind of changed that because they added their own label, so you knew what you were buying each time, what you were getting. From a merchant, it might not be the same juice in every barrel. So you might be buying from Joe Schmo, but what was in the barrel might be coming from X number of different distilleries. The blenders from really the likes of Alexander Walker and the Chivas brothers and so forth. But you go from there to the next level, which was you build brand loyalty insofar as that your consumer will always return to that point. I guess as a slight tangent, around about the same time, a guy called Porteous designed a new type of mill for grinding grain. And a lot of distilleries have Porteous mills. If you go on the tour, the mill's churning away. but the mill was made so well that it never needed
They
to
went
be
out of business.
it wouldn't break down. So once everybody had bought one that he'd not created any inbuilt obsolescence. There was no need to replace it. And suddenly his customer base dried up and he went bust. But so I think what Tommy Dewar did was he realized that what you need is to get a brand loyalty involved, get people really associate with it, enjoy it, camaraderie with friends. And he was the great raconteur, of course, but also to seek out opportunity. Prohibition was a great opportunity for Dewars and things like that. But I think in terms of changing the way that you present any brand, it could have been watches or steam engines. I think the fact is know your customer and keep your customer loyal, and that was what Tommy Dewar could do. Good.
And I'm going to build on this. I'm going to ask our panel. I've asked you this before, who you've seen as the various master classes and who you liked. But I want to know, is there someone from my panel that you wish you had seen as a brand ambassador or an owner, someone that's gone around and talked about their brand? So I'll throw that out to the panel. Anyone that you think you would have really loved to have seen, or someone you liked so much you just want to throw their name out?
Well, I enjoyed the Ben Romack guys. Like that was really interesting. I sat through the Johnny Walker, and the brand ambassador they had here was like, he knew what he was talking about. And I looked at the presentation more than the product.
Okay.
That was really interesting. The product, I wasn't sold, but the presentation was great.
He was endearing somehow. There was something there.
Yeah, I liked him. He presented to a point that I was ready to buy, but it just didn't make sense.
Nicole, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is there anyone you would have loved to have seen, or someone you liked so much you would see them anytime they come?
It's hard to say. We get a good chunk of Canadian brand ambassadors, but we don't get the big international ones that you see in social media world. There seems to be a lot of amazing ones out there, and I think during the COVID lockdown, we've seen a lot more of them become present, and we've become more aware of them.
Let's just throw Robin Cooper out there. He was fantastic. We saw him last week with us. He did the tasting with us, so we'll throw him. Drew and Sheila, do you have someone that you loved or would have loved to have seen?
For someone I'd like to see if I have an opportunity post-lockdown, I haven't seen Stephanie McLeod yet, so I'd like an opportunity if I get back home and get a chance. I'd like to get a shot to see her.
Who's that?
Stephanie McLeod. She's the master blender at Dewars in Alberfeldy.
Gotcha.
I just think she's full of stories, and she has access to all of the old records and libraries at Alberfeldy, so she has access to all of the old recipes that are still locked away somewhere. So I think the stories she has access to and the things that she could tell would just be amazing to listen to.
Cool. Perfect. Drew, you're fine?
I don't know what I don't know. So no, it's not one I've really thought of. I know there's a few reps, brand that are no longer with us that I wish weren't. But yeah.
All right.
Yeah, no, nobody really comes to mind.
Cheryl Kent?
I would actually like to Jay Wheelock, one of our local brand, and he's no longer with us, unfortunately.
Shit, yeah.
We got the opportunity, Jay. So many times we got to talk to him at the different events and stuff. I never ever seen him do his spiel, his slick, but he's the guy that would walk into the room at a 400-person whiskey tasting event, and everybody would just migrate to him. He was just kind of that. He had that natural draw. He was just such a down-to-earth kind of guy. Every time we talked to him, he made you feel like you were the most important person in the room. And
Hey,
I
Kent?
did get to see him in one of his shows or his events where he was actually presenting something.
I don't think he had a spiel. He was honest. He was
he just was.
He was a real person.
He did Amroot. He did
Cavalan.
Yep.
Glenronic.
Greg Blant were back in the day. I mean,
what's the cask? The raw cask, Blackadder. He did Blackadder for them as well.
That was
Fantastic guy. Now I'm going to throw my 2 cents in, but I need your help because we did this with our last, 2 books ago. The bourbon barons, let's say the 5 bourbon families went around and they actually did presentations. And David talked about, not our David, the previous David talked about that as well, how they went around as a group. Can anyone remember what they called themselves?
Oh my gosh.
So the Beams and Wild Turkey and I can't even remember who else. There were 5 guys. They went around as a group, and they were the owners of the distilleries, and they were talking about their wares. And this is back in the 70s, early 80s as well.
Wasn't Jimmy Russell in that group?
Yes.
Yeah.
And there was 5. Yeah. Anyways, when I was reading that, when we were doing our Wild Turkey, I was thinking these guys would have been the ones you wanted to see. Not just that, you would want to be with them after it was done, just hearing the stories in the bars afterwards and what they were talking about. I would want that part of it, I think. And so,
yeah, when I worked for Campari, we went down to Kentucky to the what do you call the groundbreaking, the new visitor center they were building there. So we were there for the groundbreaking. We're all milling around, and we added it as part of a training session for 3 or 4 days of going around and seeing what the competition was like. You went to Buffalo Trace and so forth, and so we spent a couple of hours with Jimmy to actually sit down in their office where they do like the sniffing and scratch and sniff thing in Wild Turkey, and Jimmy taking us through it was that's an education. People would pay thousands to sit in a room with Jimmy Russell at Wild Turkey Distillery, and then we did all that, and then the following day we ended up at Heaven Hill and we got taken around by Parker, and it was just you don't realize at the time just what kind of education you're being led into, because you're only getting a crack through the door, but it's opening you up to a legacy that takes you back so far back that it isn't just it's the stories as well as, oh well, this tastes like this. I mean, anybody can smell it and go, well, I know what I smell steamroller. But the thing is that it's how they get to their story, and how I love the story Jimmy was telling us, that there used to be a horse racetrack in Kentucky, and the governor of Kentucky would come in, and he would go up to the bartender, and the bartender would go, Buffalo Trace or whatever it might be, Wild Turkey, and he would order that. He would see Jimmy Russell say, Wild Turkey, and he would drink that because he would then make a show that he was drinking the distillery that the manager was there. Yeah. And he came in one day and he went, so who's in today? And the guy went, they all are. And he went, gin and tonic. So raccontourism is dead, and that's what really makes it alive.
What's interesting is these guys, like Jimmy and his son Eddie and Parker and Jim. What was Jim's name from Four Roses? Just retired. Anyway, but
Murphy.
Anyway,
not Murray.
No,
not Jim Murray. But
what these guys were. You have to remember. You have to put them in context of what was going on. These guys were factory workers. These are guys were factory workers in an unglamorous business.
Nice. Yeah, at the time.
Right? That's what they were. They were factory workers in an unglamorous business.
Yeah.
Right? And it wasn't until a whole new generation discovered whiskey that they turned them into rock star status. Like Al Young Al Young, who was like, the Four Roses, he was the Four Roses global ambassador before he unfortunately, passed away last year.
Yeah, that's
it was Jim. Oh shoot, what's Jim's name? God damn it. Anyway,
you don't have a whole bunch
Al
of
and I had
people here, so we can't help you.
Jim and I, or Al and I had an extended conversation in preparation for my book, and I had met Al on the road. I'd met him, on tour, like we were crossing paths in bars and restaurants and hotel lobbies and stuff like that. And we had an extended conversation about what it was like to be a Seagram's man, and that's what they were. I mean, it was all corporate. Hiram Walker owned one group, and Seagram's owned another group, and National owned another group, and Hugh Blind were importers, and it was very, very, very different than what it is today. So these guys were just, they were Seagram's men, or they were Austin Nichols men, and they hung on. And every one of them will tell you this. They're not going to tell you this out in a presentation, but they'll tell you this when the lights are low. They were lucky because they saw all of the other people get their jobs axed in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s when no one was drinking whiskey at all. Yeah. And they hung on. They were able to manage through it, and all of those guys, they had no idea that this explosion was going to happen, and that they would be heralded, and that they would be, that their company would be sought by people who would be their grandchildren, and people like laying roses at their feet and welcoming them and things like that. There was no idea about this. These guys were factory workers. I come from a factory town. I know exactly what these guys were like, I know exactly what these guys were like.
Russell ever saw a Sharpie for most of his life, a golden Sharpie that he has to sign bottles with. That would be, if you told Jimmy that 60 years ago, he'd be signing bottles.
Oh my God.
Golden Sharpie.
God, yeah. I mean, it's funny. So what's wonderful about them is Jimmy, especially. I mean, Jimmy's looking at, he just goes home and laughs, because, he just can't believe that the world is like this right now, because, these guys did some brutal, tough, long, they were factory workers.
They did. Right? And they had really lean times, right? Really lean times for them, and where they almost disappeared. And they just had to work their asses off to stay afloat.
Well, as far as the whiskey operation, all those guys, you got to remember, like what Austin Nichols was doing. They were importers as well. Then they were making a shit ton of grain neutral spirit because people were drinking vodka and cheap gins and things like that. Same thing with the Seagram's companies and Hiram Walker and but they weren't making whiskey. They were, what do we got there? Can't see it.
Kent, did you finally find the name of the group? I can't see that, buddy.
You can't read it.
Yep. You got to read it.
What it is.
Road Warriors. That was them. And if you have the list of people, Kent, turn your mic on and tell me the list of people. I've been going nuts. Sorry, Robin, for the past 15 minutes trying to figure this out.
I know where this is, and I was like, oh my God. Let's see. So Jimmy Bean, Booker's, Noel, Elmer T.
What's
Lee.
he reading from?
Oh, this is from our American Spirit Walter.
So David Jennings was our author 2 books ago.
Oh, okay. Got it right.
Yeah. So let's see. Heaven Hills, the Parker Beam. And who are we missing? Yeah, so we got Jimmy Bean, Elmer T. Lee, Heaven Parker. I thought there was 5.
Jimmy Russell.
And Jimmy Russell. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So there's basically the 5 of them.
Those were the guys I would have wanted. And factory workers, guys that had to get out to sell their wares, knowing that maybe their stuff is going to go bust, but they trust in their things. I would have just wanted to be there afterwards, see the presentation, but be with them after. I've got 2 questions before we finish this off and go to our after dram. Kent, you could make my dinner to finish it all off with, but my question, David, is when we read the book, you talk about American measurements, inches and miles and stuff like that. When we talk about the language of whiskey as opposed to the language of Scotch, is there an alternate book in the United Kingdom, in Europe, that uses centimeters, meters, and you talk about the language of Scotch as opposed to the language of whiskey? Do you have a
not yet one
okay.
book? I am that weird transition generation, whereas we were taught in feet and inches and pounds and ounces up until about the age of 8 or 9, and then everything had to become metric in order for us to be compliant with the European Economic Community. So I'll basically sum that up in a very old joke of this old grandmother goes into the shop and she says to the guy, "I would like a pound of potatoes." And the guy goes, "It's not pounds anymore, it's kilograms." And she goes, "Okay, in that case, I'll have a pound of kilograms." So I'm also just born after decimalization. Now, you Canadians have had decimalization on the pound and into the dollar for a long, long time. Well, next year is 50 years of decimalization. And so in the book, you could try and translate pounds, shillings, and pence into pounds and pence, but you would drive yourself crazy. The next book, I'll try, because then once you get into weights and measures, you have to go into Scottish weights and measures, which is, stone was something you got out of a river. I promised myself I wouldn't speak American. That took me 2 weeks to get that out of my system and start talking about sidewalks and such. But the two that I didn't realize is Americans don't use stones for 14 pounds, which we do. I measure my weight in stones, pounds, and ounces. And the other thing is Americans don't know what a fortnight is. So I thought, I'll see you in a fortnight. What are you talking about?
4 nights?
14 days.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
14
nights, literally. But so it is in pounds, shillings, it's in pounds and ounces and feet and inches and so on. And when I use the word gallon, I'm using imperial gallons. So I'm using the not 3.8 liters, but 4.5 liters. So these
4.54, yeah.
The United States is completely screwed up. We're so screwed up here because we flirted with metric in the 70s and then we punted. And so now we're left with 750 milliliters of wine or spirit, but I can still go buy a quart of milk. I buy all my Pepsi in a liter. I mean, it makes absolutely. I buy a 12-ounce can of beer and Pepsi in a liter. It makes no damn sense. Right?
Well, you want to take that because in Britain we don't really like to get rid of stuff that's old-fashioned very quickly. So you buy because of the European Union for now for the next 20 days. The European Union is telling us that we have to buy our gas or petrol by the liter. So everybody buys their petrol by the liter, but we still work out our miles to the gallon because the British government has said it will never get rid of the mile and it will never get rid of the and it will never get rid of the mile and never get rid of the pint. So
was that beneath Brexit? Was Brexit all about getting rid of the mile?
Who knows? Brexit is the greatest example of don't believe the polls.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I think there's a Scottish economist. I don't think he teaches at Harvard anymore. A guy called Niall Ferguson, and he's out of the roughest parts of Glasgow, but he's lived in America for years, and he's he's done TV shows, and so he's a sort of a philosopher economist. But he actually reckons that that it's not Britain that's on the shaky peg out of all this; it's the European Union, and it really isn't in the European Union's interest for this to go well. So there's a lot happening, and then you throw Scottish nationalism in that for good measure, and not LaGuardia.
Okay. No, we will. Robin, you don't know really what's going on, but every week I write way too many questions, and we don't get to them all. That's one question that was in the very first week that never fit. That never fit. For 5 weeks, it never really fit in the conversation. So, Kent, put on your mic and actually ask the question of David. And we'll see where this
goes. 5 weeks now. David, can you tell us what role Mayor LaGuardia played in pushing for the 21st Amendment abolishing the prohibition? 5 weeks we have been trying to get to that question.
What I'll say as I do my Doctor Who handover to Robin here is you'll get sent a bunch of questions. Try and fluff them out for as long as you can, so you don't have to answer them all. Yes, and perhaps the irony of this whole thing is that this is probably a question that Robin can answer better than I can. So I'm going to put my tuppence in, and if Robin agrees or disagrees with me on this, my knowledge does not stem to 1930s New York mayors, but my thinking on LaGuardia and prohibition really stems deeper down into his loathing of Tammany Hall. And his understanding that Gracie Mansions was essentially in the pay of Lucky Luciano and the mob. And I think that for LaGuardia, I think prohibition was watching money just disappear down the drain somehow, that the mob was making all this money. It could then control Tammany Hall, and Tammany Hall controlled what was going on in New York. So by breaking prohibition or ending prohibition, you free up that element. You take that power away from the mob, that then weakens to a certain extent Tammany Hall, which is really what his aim was. And of course he was the first mayor to be re-elected that wasn't Tammany influenced. But that's my take on that it wasn't any shape, size, or form, some sort of altruistic desire to get more people drink more and break the power of prohibition and the 18th Amendment. I think there was a deeper political element to it, but that is my answer. Is I think that it was more about mayoral power by eliminating the power source by which those who were on the other side of the coin were able to garner that power. But Robin, I might be off on the wrong tangent there.
We're not going to put you on the spot, Robin.
Is there a question?
What's the question? I'm not.
Robin, I'll read it to you in the after dram. We're very good. Just hold on one big second. So, because that's all the time we have tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It's an hour and 12 minutes. We're a little bit over, but we had great conversation, so we're allowed to have a couple minutes over, aren't we? It's been a fantastic evening. Thanks to our listeners. Thanks to the panel, everyone around me. Dave, Drew, Sheila, Kent, Cheryl, Nicole, David, and Robin. It's been an absolute pleasure spending this time with you all, and I hope you had as much fun as I did. So as always, we're going to hold up our glass. Here's the good company. Here's the good whiskey. Here's the good books. Here's the good conversation. And here's to seeing you all next week, Saturday, December 12th, for our Whisky Book Club's sixth book. And I'm going to read the whole thing. The Complete Whiskey Course, a comprehensive tasting school in 10 classes. And we'll be reviewing Class 1 and Class 2 with my wife's putting stuff in my face, with author Robin Robinson. So buy the book. But as the last one, buy this book. It's still Christmas present. You'll have enough time to actually get it by Christmas.
Yes.
You should get it, everybody. And the second book you have to order is this one. This one's way heavier, actually. It's like a weight going up and down. It's like I'm making some.
Hey, if you drop my book on your foot, you will break your toe. I will tell you that right now.
Yeah. Don't drop it. Don't drop it. As a final note, if you don't want to miss a minute of future episodes, click on the like, click on the subscribe button. And ladies and gentlemen, we will see you then. So whiskey brothers and sisters, raise up a dram. Sláinte. Cheers to one of you, all of you, and we hope to see you later. Thank you for being here with us